Let's talk about the Australian housing market because, man, is it a puzzle right now. On one hand, you've got prices that are still climbing, and the headlines, they look pretty strong. But on the other, there's this feeling that the ground is kind of shifting under our feet. It's like we're in this massive tug-of-war, and we're about to pull it apart and see what's really going on.
Yeah, this quote absolutely nails it. We're not talking about a crash, but we're definitely not in some kind of crazy boom either. The market is in a state of transition, and honestly, that is the key to understanding everything else that's happening.
And that really is the big question, isn't it? At the end of the day, what does all this mean for you, for your wallet? Whether you're trying to buy, maybe looking to sell, or you're just, watching from the sidelines trying to figure it all out. We're going to connect these big, flashy headlines to what's actually happening on the ground.
All right, first up, let's zoom all the way out. Let's get that big 30,000-foot view of the national picture. Now, if you look at Australia as a whole, things are still technically growing. But, and this is a big but, that's just where the story starts, not where it ends. So get this, in the latest figures we have for November, national home values went up by 1%. Now, 1% is a pretty solid number, right? I mean, that's the third month in a row that we've seen growth over 1%. So if you just glance at the surface, you'd think, hey, nothing to see here, no downturn in sight.
But here's where the plot thickens, because 1% is strong, but it's actually a tiny step back from the 1.1% we saw just the month before, in October. It might seem like a really subtle change, but trust me, it's the first little crack we're seeing in what has been some seriously incredible momentum.
And this is exactly why that national average can be so misleading. It's basically hiding these huge, wild differences between cities. Honestly, the story of Aussie property right now, it's a tale of two, maybe even three completely different markets all happening at once. I mean, just look at this contrast. It is stark. Over on one side, you've got Perth, which is just on an absolute tear, jumping 2.4% in a single month. And then you have the big guys, Sydney and Melbourne, basically moving at a snail's pace compared to that. It's like they're not even in the same race. Okay, let's put that Perth number into perspective for a second. We're talking about over $21,000 being added to the median home value in just 1 month. That's like $5,000 a week. It's a market running on a completely different kind of engine.
So you've got to be asking, what is driving this massive difference? Well, it all boils down to that classic story, supply and demand. In Perth, there's a serious shortage of homes for sale. Listings are more than 40% below the long-term average. But then you look at Sydney, and it's a totally different story. It's a much more balanced market. Listings are almost back to normal. And it's simple, right? When buyers have more choice, they can take their time, be a bit more cautious, and that naturally puts the brakes on how fast prices can climb. And that slowdown we're seeing in Sydney and Melbourne, it is not random. It points straight to the single biggest headwind, the biggest obstacle facing the entire market right now. And that word is affordability. Well, for months and months, house prices have just been sprinting away from what people actually earn. And it really feels like we finally hit a wall. The numbers behind this, honestly, they're pretty staggering. Okay, here's the first one. Right now, the national median home value is 8.2 times the typical annual pre-tax household income. Let that sink in. 8.2. That is a record high. And that stat translates directly into your household budget. Just think about this for a second. An average income family trying to buy a median-priced home today, they need to set aside 45% of their income just to pay the mortgage. 45%. That's another near record, and it is squeezing people hard. And look, the crucial thing to remember here is that these aren't just some abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. This is the day-to-day reality for millions of Aussies. It means trying to save a deposit feels almost impossible. It means your borrowing power is stretched to the absolute limit. And for anyone who does manage to get a loan, those repayments are, well, pretty confronting. It's basically forcing buyers to completely rethink their strategy and pushing them toward whatever lower-priced homes they can find.
Now, this affordability crisis, it's not happening in a vacuum. Nope. There are a bunch of other big forces at play, and they are all just piling on the pressure.
You can almost see it as a perfect storm of pressures all coming together. We saw the first signs of heat coming off the market when auction rates peaked way back in September. Now, everyone's trying to grapple with this new reality of higher for longer interest rates. And as if that wasn't enough, we've got new lending rules from the banking regulator, APRA, that are just about to kick in, making things even tougher for the most stretched borrowers.
So let's just quickly break down these headwinds. First up, interest rates. The whole higher for longer thing, that's putting a real ceiling on how much people can borrow. Second, auction rates. They're cooling off, especially in Sydney and Melbourne, which is a super clear sign that the buyer frenzy is over. And finally, those new April lending rules. Now, they won't hit everyone for sure, but they send this strong signal of caution across the entire market.
Okay, so we've looked at the data, we've looked at the different forces at play. Let's bring it all home. What does this more balanced, kind of more complicated market actually mean for you?
All right, if you're a first home buyer, there is a bit of a silver lining. The pace isn't as completely frantic as it was, but your absolute #1 job is to know exactly what your borrowing capacity is. Now, if you're looking to upgrade or downsize, it is all about location, location, location. The conditions are just so different from city to city, and it looks like the lower-priced end of the market is moving the fastest. And for you investors out there, yeah, places like Perth might look super tempting, but remember, those higher interest rates make the math much, much tighter.
So, here's the bottom line. We are definitely entering a more balanced market. That runaway growth we saw, it's being held in check by this massive affordability barrier. But, and this is key, demand hasn't just disappeared. Instead, it's just getting smarter. It's getting way more competitive, especially for those more affordable properties. And all of this leaves us with the one big question as we look ahead. For so long, the market was powered by a fear of missing out, FOMO, and just not enough supply. But now, with affordability acting as this major speed limit, it's really unclear where the market's going to find its next gear. And that's the tension we'll all be watching.